welcome to South Asia Today, a show that provides you the glimpses of South Asia. I'm your host Yeshi. Here are the headlines. India-Bangladesh boosts ties at 7th Joint Consultative Commission meeting in New Delhi. Pakistanis hit streets as country reels under unprecedented inflation. And Nepal's ancient golden throne kept on public display. Let's begin the show. India and Bangladesh relations are reaching a new height as both neighbors have come closer to strengthening their defence, economic and cultural ties. Recently, foreign ministers of India and Bangladesh, Dr. S.J. Shankar and Abul Kalam Abdul Momen, met in Indian capital New Delhi to boost bilateral relations between the two countries. We have a report.
Bangladesh Minister for External Affairs Abul Kalam Abdul Momen recently visited New Delhi and met his Indian counterpart S. Jaishankar at the 7th Joint Consultative Commission to strengthen the relations between two countries. Both the ministers signed and exchanged agreements for furthering their ties during the meeting, which was the first physical JCC event since the advent of the coronavirus pandemic. Highlighting the strengthening bilateral partnership, Indian External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar said that the two countries overcame the pandemic in terms of vaccine and medicine supply. He also claimed India looks forward to working with Bangladesh to take ties to new domains including cybersecurity, upgradation of the railway system.
We have also jointly overcome the pandemic and whether it was vaccine cooperation, whether it was the Oxygen Express, whether it was medical oxygen plants, supplies of medicines and life-saving drugs that we gave to each other. Our shared fight against COVID-19 has been exemplary. So we now look forward to working with you to take our ties into new domains, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, startups, fintech. We were very pleased to receive your ICT minister. We had a very good visit by your railway minister recently, and we would like to expand our cooperation on upgradation of the railway system.
India and Bangladesh are actively involved in cooperation projects to boost bilateral relations and people-to-people connections between the two sides. Both the countries expressed satisfaction that despite challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic, they worked closer than ever before in every sector, from security and border management to mutually beneficial trade and investment flows. The two sides also discussed ways to increase train services and flights to facilitate the large number of Bangladeshi travelers who come to India for both tourism and medical treatment. After a long gap of more than 2 years due to the COVID-19 pandemic, passenger train services between India and Bangladesh resumed on May 29 this year. The previous JCC meeting, which was held in September 2020, saw two sides discussing ways to establish peace within the shared borders. The year 2021 marked the golden jubilee of the bilateral dealings between Bangladesh and India.
India is the most important and the closest neighbor of Bangladesh. And I am proud to say that because of the initiatives that you have taken, the Prime Minister Sri Narendra Modi has taken, and also our Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, we achieved a lot of stability and peace within this region, and that is helping us to have development.
Over the last decades, India-Bangladesh relations have warmed up, entering a new era of cooperation and moving beyond historical and cultural ties to become more assimilated in the areas of trade, connectivity and defense. Observers say the JCC meeting helped prepare the grounds for Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's planned visit to India, which is expected in July this year.
Moving on, Sri Lanka is battling its worst financial crisis since independence in 1948, as decades of economic mismanagement and recent policy errors coupled with a hit from COVID-19 to tourism and remittances drying up foreign reserves to record lows. Recently, university students took to the streets in capital Colombo as they demanded the resignation of the government of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. We have a report.
Hundreds of university students, trade unionists and artists marched through the streets of Sri Lanka's capital Colombo, demanding the resignation of the government of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. Many protesters accused Rajapaksa and his influential family of mishandling the economy. The worsening situation of Sri Lanka has led people angered by long queues, often overnight for fuel, faced off with security forces over the weekend.
කතා මුළු ජනතාවම එක හඬකින් කියද්දි ඔබ ඵලයන් ඔබ තමයි මේ ලංකාව මුහුණ දෙලා තියෙන මේ ආර්ථික දේශපාලන අර්බුදයට වගකියුත්තා මූලික වගකියුත්තා උඹ
අපිට දෙන්න කියලා අපිට නිදහසේ ජීවත් වෙන්න පුළුවන් රටක් තමයි මේ දරුවෝ ඉල්ලන්නේ මේ දරුවන්ගේ අම්මලාට තිබුණා වූ හීන සියල්ල බොඳ වෙච්ච මොහොතක මේ දරුවන්ට තිබුණු හීන සියල්ල බොඳ වෙච්ච වේලාවක තමයි මේ දරුවන් ඉල්ලන්නේ දූෂිත පාලකයින් අපිට එපා ගෝඨාභය දැන් ඔයා ෆේල් ගෙදර යන්න.
The ongoing economic situation of Sri Lanka has been exhausting drivers who have been waiting for hours for petrol. Sri Lanka is scrambling to find foreign exchange to pay for desperately needed fuel imports, and its existing stock of petrol and diesel is projected to run out in a matter of days. The island nation also ordered public sector employees to work from home for 2 weeks due to fuel shortage.
අතේ ඉඳලා ඉන්නවා දැන් අද උදේ දැන් එනවා කියලා කියනවා තාමත් නැහැ මේ දවසක් මේ කියන්නේ අපි සෑහෙන අමාරුවෙක් මේක කරන්නේ හම්බ කරගන්න විදියකුත් නැහැ ගෙදර යන්න විදියකුත් නැහැ නිදා ගන්න විදියකුත් නැහැ දැන් තෙල් ගත්තම තෙල් අරගෙන ඉවරලත් ආයෙ රස්සා කරන්නත් බෑ නිදා ගන්න යන්නේ.
An International Monetary Fund team began bailout talks in Sri Lanka as the country's cabinet cleared a constitutional amendment to dilute presidential powers that could assuage protesters amid rising tensions. A 9-member IMF team which arrived in the commercial capital Colombo on Monday held talks with Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe on how to structure what will be Sri Lanka's 17th loan program with the global lender. The United Nations has outlined a plan to raise $47 million to provide assistance to 1.7 million Sri Lankans worst hit by the crisis over the next 4 months.
Now we take a look at some happenings in Asia in a segment called Asia Watch.
The 12th ministerial meeting of the World Trade Organization concluded with a major diplomatic triumph for India as it successfully negotiated with the 164-member body to agree to its terms on key issues. After an extension of 2 days, the 5-day grueling meet came to a consensus on food security, fisheries, and a waiver of patents of vaccine manufacturing, a humanitarian push prioritized by India. India's insistence on waiver for vaccine patents will come as a boon for poorer nations. The nations that suffered the brunt of the pandemic due to inequitable vaccine distribution will now have the ability to manufacture vaccines and not depend on vaccine handouts from developed nations.
भारत का पक्ष बहुत संवेदनशील पक्ष है. भारत की बात बहुत फेयर है, इक्विटेबल है, विश्व के हित में है और मैं समझता हूं कि आज पूरे विश्व ने ये स्वीकार किया है कि विश्व में और ज़्यादा लोगों को समृद्धि पहुंचनी चाहिए.
Apart from vaccines, India maintained a resolute stance on the regulation of ambiguous fishery laws that somehow allowed some countries to indulge in overfishing and illegal fishing in territorial waters of other countries. To the dismay of some, a stringent law will be framed to penalize the offenders. The third major victory came in the form of consensus on the support prices of crops. While the World Trade Organization has maintained the minimum support price under 10% of the value of production, India has been fighting for a higher minimum support price, keeping in mind the economic well-being of its farmers. It is to be noted that the World Trade Organization doesn't function like other global bodies, where issues go to vote when it comes to differences amongst its members. Even the smallest of members can veto a proposal. Under such circumstances, pushing a demand or proposal through is nothing short of a miracle. A 100% success rate by the Indian delegation is therefore an unprecedented triumph. And the credit has to be given to prudent and exemplary Indian diplomacy that is working hand in hand with the country's growing political and economic clout, steering its position from deal breaker to deal maker.
South Korea has launched its first domestically produced space rocket Nuri, lifting off from the Narrow Space Center on the southern coast of South Korea. Nuri placed a 1.3-ton dummy satellite and 4 small cube satellites into orbit. The successful launch is a major step forward for the country's efforts to jumpstart its space program and helps pave the way for South Korea's ambitious goals for 6G networks, spy satellites, and even lunar probes. The country also plans to launch a range of military satellites, but officials deny the new space rocket has any use as a weapon. Nuri uses only Korean rocket technologies and is country's first domestically built space launch vehicle. In its first test in October, the rocket completed its first sequences, but the launch ultimately failed. The Korea Aerospace Research Institute says it has plans for at least 4 more test launches by 2027. South Korea is also working with the United States on a lunar orbiter and hopes to land a probe on the moon by 2030.
Electronic substrate for electric product is required to be shaped, miniature and applicable to multiple uses. Japanese electronic parts companies have the technology to make various electronic substrates. The foundation of semiconductors and electronic substrates are replaced by a variety of materials. The technology to attach to cloth and film was realized by changing the temperature at the time of installation. For electronic vehicle technology, mass production of the electronic substrate is required. Robot technology has enabled a full automated line in the manufacture of an electronic substrate which has many processes. Technological advancement increases the variation and mass production of electronic substrates. Japanese parts companies contribute to electronic industry by background support technology.
Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman met with Jordan's King Abdullah upon his arrival to Jordan. The first such visit in years by the de facto ruler of Saudi Arabia comes at a time when Jordan's economy is struggling with the economic knock-on effects of the Ukraine war. Business leaders and officials hope it will unblock at least $3 billion of investment projects that Saudi Arabia committed to in recent years but which never materialized. Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund, the Public Investment Fund, is looking into investing billions of dollars in mega infrastructure projects in Jordan, including an estimated $2.5 billion railway project. Saudi Arabia has over $12 billion worth of investments in Jordan and once rescued Jordan with cash injection but has held off direct budget support. Officials said discussions would look at more ways to help Jordan's economy, which has been hammered by rising fuel prices and higher food imports. Jordan imports most of its energy needs. Saudi-Jordanian ties reached a low during former President Donald Trump's term in office when Amman, a staunch US ally, felt that Riyadh's close relations with Trump's administration undermined Jordan's pivotal role in Arab-Israel peacemaking.
A food machine is being used to automatically prepare wagashi, a Japanese traditional sweet dish. It beautifully creates the delicate appearance of the sweet. Food machine making competition is growing tough in the course of creating such a level of technology that can give taste similar to traditional cooking. Recently, Japanese rice balls have been sold at all the stores all over the world. Visitors are amazed with the new technology. The automatic fried machine is designed to give the same feeling as traditionally cooked fried rice. It is very important that the temperature of the pot is kept at the same level and all the ingredients are mixed properly.
Pakistan is facing severe inflation rate for the last few months. Recently, people in long queues have taken to the streets in the country against skyrocketing inflation, sudden spike in the fuel prices and power tariffs. Daily essential items have become out of reach of the common citizens. The situation has prompted outreach across all sections of the society. We have a report.
Long queues have emerged outside petrol kiosks across Pakistan in the wake of successive petrol price hike announcements. Since Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's coalition came to power, petrol prices have risen by 56%, while diesel has registered an unprecedented spike of 82%. This has triggered massive inflation across the market, from kitchen staples to footwear and apparel. Prices have skyrocketed. Although the data is yet to be released, economic observers estimate recent inflation at 18%. The situation has prompted outrage across all sections of society. Thousands have taken to the streets in different cities of the country in protest.
अगर पेट्रोल महंगा हुआ तो हर चीज़ महंगी हो जाएगी। गरीब आदमी या तो लटेरा बन जाएगा या खुदकुशी करेगा, क्यों उसने अपने बच्चे पालने हैं। इस 30 रुपये कोई कम रेट नहीं है, बहुत ज़्यादा रेट है। कभी आज दिन तक इतना पेट्रोल महंगा नहीं हुआ। यही हमारी रिक्वेस्ट है, ये इसकी कीमत को फ़ौरन वापस लिया जाए।
The IMF and Islamabad had previously reached a deal to release over 900 million USD in funds, contingent on Pakistan removing already in place fuel subsidies and raising fuel prices. The funds would come from a $6 billion relief package agreed upon between Pakistan and the IMF in 2019. Ousted Prime Minister Imran Khan had announced fuel and electricity subsidies in his last days in power, as the country faced double-digit inflation. A move the IMF said deviated from the terms of the 2019 deal. The agreement to remove subsidies in the oil and power sectors is aimed at reducing the country's fiscal deficit. The raising price of fuel has been the major point of contention between Pakistan and the IMF. To date, only about half of the $6 billion USD in funds have been released. It is not clear when the next IMF review would take place. Meanwhile, observers monitoring the country's economy say the government's decision to raise prices all of a sudden and at one go has contributed to mounting hardships on Pakistan citizens.
Oil price increase makes common man life miserable. It also stifles the growth of the economy and it put impact on demand and supply. It not only impact in demand and supply, but it also create a lot of troubles for a common man.
Pakistan is at risk of becoming a state in default, which could plunge into an unprecedented economic crisis. International observers cautioned, time and time again, that Pakistan was treading on thin ice when it chose the path of subsidies and populism, rather than enacting measures to protect its economy. While some of them blame the recently ousted Prime Minister Imran Khan, others say these policies have been hallmarks of nearly all Pakistani governments over the years. Pakistan today is rapidly descending down the economic ladder.
Moving on, Nepal is a land of mountains and has rich cultural and historical heritage. The rulers in the country own the precious metal in quantities that we can't even imagine today. These rulers even carved their thrones out of gold, and they were so amazing. Even today, the Himalayan nation cherishes it and displays it as a mark of the beauty of the country. To preserve this tradition alive, a centuries-old golden throne is put on display in the premises of Patan Darbar Square in Lalitpur city, which attracts scores of visitors. The throne, entirely made of gold, belonged to the king of Lalitpur, Srinivas Malla, and is displayed once a year for the public. Have a look.
Surrounded by lofty Himalayas from all sides is the magnificent religious and cultural nation of Nepal. Thousands of tourists visit every year in the country to see the beautiful picturesque nature and historical places. One of those, the famous Krishna Mandir, is the 17th century Shikara-style temple built by Siddhi Narsingh Malla. On the steps of Krishna Mandir, in the premises of Nepal's Patan Durbar Square, golden throne is kept on display for the public so that people can offer their praise and worship it. Dating back to nearly 4 centuries and before the formal unification of Nepal, the golden throne belongs to the then king of Lalitpur, Srinivas Malla. Made up with gold plated, this beauty belongs to the famous Malla dynasty of the Himalayan nation. It is considered to be one of the most iconic thrones of the rulers across Nepal.
कृष्ण मन्दिर पनि सिद्ध नरसिंह मल्लको पालामै उहाँबाट नै यो बनाइएको मन्दिर हो है अनि यो सिंहासन पनि उहाँको भयो र यो जुन गीत आज वादन गरिन्छ त्यो पनि सिद्ध नरसिंह मल्लद्वारा नै रचित.
The throne that is kept on display at the square of Patan Durbar, which once used to be the royal palace, was built in the year 1666 AD. As per the scriptures and data that is engraved on the throne, the royal seat is dedicated to all public, not only the royal family.
त्यो बेला ताम्राकार र शिल्पकार दुईटा समूहले चाहिँ यसलाई चाहिँ रेन्टमा पनि लान सकिन्छ. त्यो बेलाको 2 रुपैयाँ त्यसले रेन्टमा लान सकिन्छ र त्यसको अर्थ के हो भने त्यो पनि वन काइन्ड अफ कन्जर्भेसनै हो, संरक्षणको लागि. त्यो ताम्राकार र शिल्पकारले के भन्छ, ताम्राकारले धातुको काम गर्छ, धातुको मेन्टेन गर्छ भने शिल्पकारले काठको कामहरू गर्छन्. त्यसरी यो अभिलेखमै कुदिएको सिंहासन हो र दायाँ बायाँ दुईटा चाहिँ नेपालको झण्डा अङ्कित झण्डाको नेपालको रिप्रेजेन्ट गर्छ भने अर्को दुईटाको जुन पार्टहरू भएको छ त्यो चाहिँ बोधि वृक्षको प्रतीकको रूपमा लिएको छ. किनभने काठमाडौँ भ्यालीको रिलिजन चाहिँ हिन्दुइजम र बुद्धिज्म एज इक्वलमा जानेको हुन्छ.
With the formal end of Malla regime in Nepal and the unification of the modern nation, the throne had remained unattended and disregarded inside the Patan Durbar. Easy to carry by separating the parts in pieces, the pieces of the throne were scattered and kept at various locations around the Kathmandu Valley. The seat for the king is made over the structure of Garud, with 2 lions on both sides, standing over the pair of elephants which symbolizes wealth. The throne goes out on display once a year that attracts visitors from all across the world.
It's time for me to wrap up today's episode. We will be back next week at the same time. This is Yeshi signing off on behalf of the entire production team of South Asia Today. Goodbye and take care.